Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of our podcast here at High Level called the High Level Spotlight Sessions. Today, I have a very, very special guest, Mark Gambale. He's been working with us for quite some time, and Mark is a very seasoned business entrepreneur, in my opinion. He worked with companies like Apple, Amazon, Gartner, and he's done many things even as a business developer, as a CMO, kind of a figure with medtech, biotech, fintech, and now obviously he's in marketing technology as well. Mark, thanks for saying yes to us for a quick podcast session. I know we are about to dive deep into the sales process, the closing process with a one call close. But before we get to that, Mark, what's your story? Help us understand who you are and how you're part of the high level ecosystem.
Oh man, thank you, Paulson. It's great to be here and be in front of an audience of people that are SaaSpreneurs, digital marketing agency owners, and anyone in between that has a high ticket offer, something that's not just buy and leave, but something that you buy and it's a service that you constantly use and say, yes, I'm so excited I bought this. The results are amazing. And your question's really fitting because as CEOs and as directors of sales, we often didn't start in life and go, I want to be in sales, or get training in whether it's in high school or college or wherever you've done. Hey, here's your certification in sales. You know all the principles. That it doesn't happen. It's usually you lead into it and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm in sales. How do I do this?
Absolutely. So, Mark, help us understand how you started the company. I believe it's called the Close One Call, or what was the name of the company again?
It's called Close with One. And the
Close with
premise there,
One.
yeah,
Yes. Help us understand the story behind that company.
sure. Well, this actually goes back to when I was 9 years old and my grandmother was battling breast cancer, and I didn't know how much time she had left. And there was a chance to say goodbye to her, and I missed a chance to say goodbye. And in our lives, we don't know how long we are here or our loved ones. And I realized that dynamic of not knowing how much time you have left is like that dynamic of when you're on a sales call. Geez, I booked 20 minutes, I booked an hour, but I don't know how much time I actually have left to convince this prospect to actually buy from me. It's like one of those timers in a game that you play that you think you have a certain amount of time, but as you get closer and along in the call, all of a sudden it accelerates and you lose your chance of actually closing the deal.
I love it. So we're going to dive deep into mastering the one call close. For those of you that are watching, whether you're a digital citizen, digital marketer, maybe you're a salesperson, maybe a small business owner, either way, wherever you are watching this from your business journey, a one call close is to me a skill set that everyone should acquire, whether they use it or not, regardless, even from a communication standpoint, it's going to help you move the needle forward. There's really three things Mark always talks about, which is what happens on the opening of the call, how do you construct the call itself during the call, and really the last part of a call is actually closing the call, obviously. So to keep the conversation a bit more organized and structured, Mark and I got together and we planned out this podcast segment. And there's really three things we're going to really dive deep into. One is understanding the sales landscape. Number two is the principle of the one call close. And three is how to close a deal at the very, very end. The deal is typically lost at the very end in my previous experiences with agency sales. Mark, help us understand the first pillar, understanding the landscape of sales.
Super important. And I'm glad you asked that, Paulson, because typically a salesperson, the concept that they have is once I've got someone on the call, I need to talk. I need to own the conversation and lead the prospect immediately from the beginning all the way through the end. And the more energy and the more excitement that I provide, the more likely it is that they will buy from me. And it's actually the complete opposite of that. So I'll give you an example. Everyone knows the game of tennis. The way a call typically starts is that the sales rep wants to show how amazing they are at serving and the product is amazing. So the sales rep says, I got this. Give me the ball. I will serve to you, and you can see how amazing I am. And then when a game of tennis begins, the score is love, love, which means both players are equal and they love each other. Like this is great. The competition hasn't really kicked off all that much. But as soon as the sales rep says, let me show you some slides, let me walk into the demo, all of a sudden the prospect feels like I'm getting aced by all these scores and this conversation that keeps hitting me. How can I keep up? And the typical, as humans, we can only take in about 42, 45 seconds of conversation before we're like, all right, that's enough. I need a breath here. And it's that concept of singles tennis versus doubles is really important to understand. So imagine this. Instead of a sales rep playing singles tennis and showing how amazing they are at the game, imagine during the beginning of a call, the sales rep says, let's talk about this. Will you join my team? I'd like you to show me your serve and talk about your problem. I'll take the net in the alley, but I want you to actually tell me what's going on and show me your current game.
I love
And,
that.
and that gives the prospect a chance to go, you know what? I'm actually really good at serving. And what serving doesn't mean is actually getting the ace. It's how good they are at talking about the problem that they have. Sales reps never going to know the problem in the mind of the CEO of the prospect. They have to let them show what it is that matters to them. So I'll give you an example. Typically, a sales rep will say, let me show you my slides. That immediately stops the conversation and the ball goes from the buyer having it to, oh, you just took the ball from me. I guess I'll give it to you. And that dynamic throws off the rest of the call, the rest of the game. I'll pause there and give you a chance to digest that.
It's interesting because most digital marketing or online sales are, it's a blind sale. You've never met the person before, typically in a room, like anywhere, like you don't know who they are. You don't know the trust of the offer. You just hear about people talking about it online. You also don't know if it applies to you the right way because the digital marketer or the citizen is really talking about a bunch of different lingo that's tech driven. And it's kind of it's quite the game, quite the risk for the prospect to really trust the process. So quite often I see, you know, the closer not understanding the true risk of what the prospect goes through versus whether you're in person. So, Mark, help us understand how you build this trust over the phone. Like one call close sounds great, but how's that trust built in reality?
The trust comes initially from something I call like the one slide rule. Um, in classic conversations and meetups, typically what happens is let's do an icebreaker. Let's go through a scenario and all share something about ourselves or go through a trust fall, some sort of experience to go, let's help everyone be at ease. The challenge with that, though, is these icebreakers are or level field. It doesn't actually give the person who's most nervous the chance to kind of share what's going on. And you actually just said it. It takes a risk for a buyer, for an owner to get on a call and go, I'm really nervous here. I'm already committing an hour of my time to this. Am I going to be hard sold? And is this going to be something that I totally regret, whether being on the call to the end or signing the dotted line and getting something and going, hmm, this is yet again another thing that I bought that I regret that I never got the answers to. So to solve that issue, I always recommend saying, today's not about slides or a demo. Would it be okay if I just popped up one slide and asked you one really important question? And when I pop up the slide, I'll usually ask this, I'll call it like a hero question and say, what is that 1 year big legacy that you want to have happen in your business that if that could happen and it happens in less time, that you would actually invest some money to make that work? And I often will say to them, give me your personal legacy as well as your business legacy. And sometimes to get people to loosen up, I'll say, all right, imagine yourself hopping on a rocket with Elon Musk and going to Mars. And you're going on this journey. And he continues to do this exploration while he's there because he's super curious. And you have a chance to then come back to the earth and go, I have 1 year left. What do I want to do? What's that big thing that matters to me? And nothing against Elon Musk or rockets, but it gets someone to think about what is that 1 year that if I could do it, it would really matter. And it puts them in the framework of, I only have my organization at this size. I really would love to grow it to this level. And if I could grow it to this level in a year, that would be super meaningful. But I've always had this challenge of being able to accelerate and grow my company. And oh, by the way, I actually want to sell it in 3 years so that I can do this other thing. I'm really passionate about this other thing. That immediately gets the prospect to just share their vision cast and all of a sudden say, this is really where I want to go. It takes them out of the day-to-day problems that they have, and it gives the sales rep the chance to just take notes in that one slide. So you're telling me you want to double the size of the business. You're telling me that you want to sell it in 3 years, or you're telling me that you want to pass this on to the next generation. Whatever they're saying is valid. So take those notes, like literally take your PowerPoint, your Google Slides, and shut it off and put it in notes view or edits view and have them see you actually writing. It's just like when you're in the classroom, when the teacher is talking and when they're saying something important, they see the students writing notes. That psychologically bonds the prospect as well as the seller together in this conversation rather than let me just show you my slides, just see how wonderful I am. And I'll throw everything at you. And I hope that something that I show you in my software platform will resonate. And that's often why a call will take 50 or 60 minutes because it's this show up and just blast against the wall and hopefully something works.
Now, when it comes to understanding the sales landscape, is this applicable to low ticket, mid ticket, and high ticket, or do we look at it as a holistic view? It doesn't matter what the offer is. It doesn't matter who the prospect is. It doesn't matter what industry it is. How do you apply your recommendations?
This is valid for any size of offering, any market, and even any sales cycle. Even if it does take more than one call to do it, by the end of this first conversation, the prospect, the business owner has realized, okay, this person's listening to me. This person's writing down what matters to me. And they're already feeling like, okay, I'm going to take more of a risk. I've already given them my vision and the things that matter to me. That's a form of trust. Ever been in a conversation with someone where they go on and on and on, and you're like, wow, they're never giving me a chance to talk? That's exactly what the sales process is. And I often will say, If you follow this rule of like the 90-10 by giving the prospect the chance to talk almost 90% of the time, that gives them the ability to actually lead themselves into wanting to have your solution. Because the longer a call lasts, the least likely it is to actually close. Because if I sign up to join a call with you, it means I'm hoping this is going to work out. I'm hoping you're the answer. And if the salesperson takes over the call, they're like, oh man, this might not be for me. They're not listening. They're not connected to why I got on the call. And I'm feeling like this is going sideways. So I'll give you an example. What really helps great is after that one slide does pop up, it's a great chance for the sales rep to say, so if you're trying to get to there and this is your problem, I can help you with that. You actually have to say, I can help you with that. I'll be the hero. Because they're looking for someone that says, I can help. Anytime you're looking for help from someone, it's this, I need to survive. I need to get through this problem. If someone says, hey, I'm the expert, I can help, it takes this sense of human relief away. There's something in our brains that basically says, I need to survive this moment and get to a better day. It's that hope and it's that driver piece. So if you can raise your hand as a sales rep and say, I can help, imagine us being in a tribal time and there's the campfire and a visiting chief comes and starts to tell some stories. The stories that they tell, if they actually support what it is the CEO, the decision maker wants to have happen, they're all about it. They're listening to those stories. They go, oh my gosh, that's me. Those are my problems. And the sales rep says, I saw that once before with another organization just like you. And here's what we did. And this is how the product solved their problem. And here's the results. When you share two or three of those, you haven't shown any slides yet. You haven't done any demo yet, but you've told them, I'm listening, I've got it. And here's two or three campfire stories that say, I know what I'm doing. Here's the proof. When that happens in the first 2 or 3 minutes, you've already done the one call close, meaning that if you can continue with that momentum, by the end of that conversation, they're saying, wow, I like this person. They listen to me. And I feel like they've earned my trust. Remember, we haven't shown anything yet.
Right. So let's talk about maybe the second pillar that we had planned, which are the principles of the one call close. I recall you saying there's about seven or even more principles, but can you highlight some of those principles that you're really the approach and the vision is kind of built on?
Sure. The first principle that we talked about is that opener of actually handing the mic or handing the ball to your buyer. By doing that, you're already giving them respect that says, I want to hear you today. I want to see if I can solve your problem. Because if a sales rep says, you know what, I'll tell you if I can't solve your problem, I'll be honest and upfront. That principle is really important because it's humility. And that principle of humility of starting off in the beginning is super powerful. So that opener says, hey, I'm the bus driver. I can get you to where you want to go, but where is it that you want to go? And then I will not drive you off the cliff because otherwise they don't want to get on the bus. They just don't want to get there. So the second principle is what I talked about, which is the 90-10 piece. It's so hard that when you've got something exciting to talk about to say something and then actually shut up or be quiet. As salespeople, we don't want there to be a vacuum. We want to just be able to keep talking and talking. But the more we talk, we're not letting the other person think and then open up. So after those two or three wow campfire stories are shown, the next principle is to actually say, okay, based upon what you said, would it be okay if I showed you this one thing? Like, is this one thing that thing that you would actually invest in that would make it worth your while to have my solution? And then if they say, yes, that's the one thing that matters to me, that's your chance. You've already been given permission to pop up the slide and walk through the demo and say, okay, you said you want to grow your business from X to Y. Here's here's how we do that with the platform. Here's the approach that we'll take. And then after you show them that piece and say, all right, so is that the one thing? If we can do that one thing, are you signed off? Are you ready to sign the contract? And a lot of people aren't taught that, but that is the trial close. And it's quite possible just by showing that one thing, which could be AI text messaging back and forth, they might go, yes, that's the one thing. I love that. So it's being able to show them what they would want to put money in and then figuring out, well, what's the value of that? And it is okay to ask them, based upon what I just showed you, what's the value of that on a scale? And they might go, it's okay. It's all right. It gives the prospect and the sales rep to have another engagement. And the sales rep can say, well, what would be really valuable? What would capture your attention? Well, honestly, if it's something that could just take over all of these pieces of my business that I hate to do. I don't like to do social posting. I don't like to do email follow ups. I don't like to book calls with my clients. It gives them a chance to say, this is my checklist. Can you handle this and that and these other things? And the sales rep doesn't have to show that next thing. They can just say, I can do that. And based upon all those things, then the prospects can say, yes, I love what you're doing. That's the most meaningful thing for me. So it's this back and forth engagement piece of validating. Imagine taking someone on a hike and leading them up a trail and then asking them, how are you feeling? Is this something that you're really liking being on the hike, or do you need a break? And it's that checking in process that's super important during the call, because during the first 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 20 minutes you can start to see the facial language and messaging from your buyer that they're not looking anymore. They're looking down, they're maybe texting. What happens if they shut off their video? That means the engagement is plummeting, absolutely plummeting. So I'll pause there for a second.
So, where do people make these mistakes? I guess they have some habitual tendencies to jump in, or they have some tendencies to over explain an offer that's already repeated 5 times, or they're, working off of maybe desperation of having to need the sale. Like where do sales agents or closers make the mistakes during the call? Because obviously we're all taught to, shut up and listen and let them have the control of the conversation, let them lead you. These are things that we all learn in sales, but where are the mistakes happening typically from your observation?
The mistakes that typically happen is feeling like your solution is so amazing, and that the more you talk about it, the more likely it is that they'll love it. When slides pop up and demo happens, all of a sudden the sales rep's focus goes in on the demo and on the slides. And it's as if a wall comes up and you're not actually looking at the prospect anymore. Imagine going into a room, a physical boardroom with a prospect, and all of a sudden showing an entire screen between you and them. That becomes the block. And when that screen is up and the demo is up, the sales rep is no longer seeing the reaction, the physical body language of the prospect. So by losing that, that's where a lot of sales calls go wrong is you're missing that language. And there's this, I'll show you this, I'll show you that. And the responses that you get back are, okay, yeah, uh-huh. Those are blank statements and words where it's like, okay, well, I'm sort of listening, sort of listening, sort of listening. And then they completely drop off. So it's being able to have this dialogue that says, would that be a wow for you? Or showing them something and looking for a wow. If they don't actually say wow, then you're not moving them from this. Today, what I'm doing is my gold standard. What you're showing me isn't so wonderful enough that I'll actually change and write you a check and go through the challenging process of learning something new. Because a lot of owners don't want to learn something new and have yet another software platform. They're resistant to that. And so you want to find the wow that will get them to go, this is worth the change. You just caught my attention. I'm really thrilled about this. I'm actually glad I'm on the call with you. So it's shifting from I'm really upset that I joined the call to wow, this is actually the one thing that I really wanted to have today.
What I'm noticing is that you're taking the prospect from current situation to the desired situation, and you're being the bridge by letting them have control. And I've heard often in leadership that the real leaders provide control because they know they're in control, right? And that confidence is something I think people just kind of gain over time with experience and the calmness of a sales call as it should be. Can you help us understand how to develop those skills to stay um, kind of calm under the pressure of the sale?
The calmness comes from being okay with the quiet in the call, being okay with the pause moments. Because if you want it too much, the your potential client's going to go, whoa, this person really, really wants me to buy. Hmm, maybe I should put my guard up because they seem too eager, and that too eagerness can actually send a message of lack of confidence. And so it's counterintuitive. And I love how you said the best salespeople actually give control to the buyer and says, you can have this. Is this something that you really want that would solve your problem? Because they're the one that's deciding, not the seller.
I love that. So let's maybe talk about the third pillar that we had kind of planned for the podcast, which is how to close the actual deal at the very end of the call, right? Let's get to that point where you and the buyer are very well offer aware, you're timing aware, and you're change aware, right? All those three boxes kind of check off. But how do we make sure we close the deal at the very end?
Great question. About halfway through the call, it is totally okay for the sales rep to say, and the people that I work with and I train say, hey, I literally just met you today, and I know you don't know a lot about me or the product, but based upon what you know right now, what are the chances? And this reminds me of the movie Dumb and Dumber. I don't know if you remember the scene where Jim Carrey says, what are the chances of a guy like you and a girl like me? Because he's super nervous of actually being together. And the woman says, well, one in a million. That's kind of like the close rate of a lot of reps today, which is you get a 10, 15, maybe 20% chance of closing the deal. Why not actually do a sanity check during the call and say, okay, you just met me. What are the chances of actually signing up today if I gave you a contract? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely, I'll sign it right now. And 1 being, who are you? What are we talking about? It puts a little bit of levity in the conversation. And it reduces that friction. And then sometimes a prospect might say, you're kind of a 5 or a 6. And the prospect is just being open and honest. How many times is the buyer given a chance to be really open and honest during a conversation? They're trying to be polite. They're trying to be like, oh, well, just send me some pricing, or let's talk later in the week, or let me talk to my colleague or the owner. That basically means you didn't sell me at all. So by asking, what's the ranking? What's the likelihood of buying from me? Then the sales rep can say, okay, I understand 5 or 6. What would make me a 9 or a 10? What would make that the wow that you would sign off for? And I call this the restaurant ranking technique. What are the chances? And the buyer might say, well, I don't know. If you had cheesecake on the menu or you had these other things, then I would sign. And it gives the rep a chance to go, you know what? We do have that. We didn't go over it in the demo, but I have that and I have these things. Is it something that you want to see right now? Or is just having it okay for you? Oh man, just having that is okay. Now that I know that you have that, what would you rank me now? Oh, you're an 8 or a 9. Great. So now that I know that you do want that and you're likely to buy from me, the next step that we take is I'll actually do an onboarding call with you. So you're switching them from I'm not so sure to this is a wow just by asking that one question and switching it from a no to a yes. And that is the core technique of a one call close is getting them from I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't maybe this was a waste of my time too. Yep. Now that you've got that, I'm ready to go. Just and it gives you a chance to just resell and do a trial close. And after showing that thing, it's okay to say, all right, now what are the chances? Because they remember they joined the call because they wanted an answer, they wanted a solution. They're not joining because of like it's random, it's intentional. They want an answer. And the final closing technique, which I always recommend, is after you've got that, okay, I'm an 8, 9, or a 10, you can either pull up a contract right there and say, okay, if I send this to you right now, will you sign? And then say, I've got it. This is my core template. I'll send it to you as an email. You can send it to them right then and have them initial the initial scope of work and say, this is what the onboarding looks like. I need this amount to start the process. Otherwise, you can say, what works for you? On Tuesday, you can just say Tuesday at 2 or Wednesday at 1. You're bracketing them into a time frame. And the reason that's so important is you're not going, oh, what about this? What about that? You're taking leadership and saying, this is what's open for me. Which one works better for you? And then when you send out the email invitation, let's say they say Wednesday at 1. Okay, I'm going to send you the invitation right now, sending it out via the email. You don't have to make it a fancy invitation. It's just, Bob and Mark next Wednesday at 1. Send the email out and ask them, okay, did you get it? Let's just make sure you don't have a dentist appointment or a podiatrist appointment at that same time. Let's make sure it actually looks good and it fits. And then ask them, okay, go ahead and click on it. Let some time go by. All right, I'm looking on mine to make sure that you actually clicked on it and I see it as a yes. As soon as it's a yes, what you've basically done is something I call the birthday invitation. You've invited someone to the birthday, which is the next call, and they've RSVP'd and said, I'm already going. As soon as you see that they're going, you're able to shift the tone of the call back to the initial goal, which is thank you for showing me that you want to take your business from here to there. I'm excited about helping you get to there so that you can get to that revenue number and then sell the business 3 years out. All of a sudden, they feel amazing. Like, you're going to help me with that. You're leaving the call with this emotion of, wow, it's good. That person's going to help me. I feel amazing. We're going to talk about the next steps and actually onboard next week. That's when you can talk about pricing and packages, not in the beginning. I mean, if they ask for it, you can get into it, but it's only if they ask for it. Don't bring up all this information if it's not asked for. Unfortunately, as salespeople, we want to get through all the slides, the whole demo, all the pricing, and just jam the information down their throats. That's very off-putting, and it's very salesy. Um, Even though we're trying to serve, it's too much. It's too desperate.
So, Mark, help us understand what happens during the onboarding call because it seems like, from what you've described, that the sales process for you and your technique, it continues into the onboarding if we haven't talked about pricing and packaging.
That's right. Is that next conversation you're able to say, all right, remember when you said these are the things that you wanted? To get there, I recommend this. This is how it's going to get you there. Let's get started there. Here's what I need as the next step. And they're like, great. You're already leading. You're telling me the investment amount. I already know I want that solution, that transformation. So the price piece steps away, and you're basically giving them the solution and the path to get there. And you're remember, you're giving them choices, giving them options, and they're likely to pick one of the two or three because they've already decided that they want to work with you. So it's literally, how much stuff do you want me to do in the beginning? And then what can we do later? And that's where the magic happens, is that final piece is in the second call. You're actually recommending and saying, I recommend you start here based upon that. Here's the investment level. So it no longer is about the price. It's about, this is what I would suggest you put in to get those results.
I love that. Mark, any final thoughts that you want to share when it comes to managing the sales processes?
I think the number one thing is recognizing that as the sales rep, you're doing the work of listening to them and serving them and being that partner in the tennis match of the opponent. The problem is on the other side of the net, and having them feel like you're a teammate and you're listening to them. That happens the whole way through. You get this concept of win win win. It's not just win versus lose or lose versus win or win win. Doing this really well gets them to go, wow, this person's a win win win. They're all about me, and I'm likely to sign with them. I want to go with them. So understanding those principles of your greatest opener, your greatest closer, and your greatest trial, close, and wow in the middle. All that goes together, which is the package of closing with one.
I love it. Mark, so as we close out the podcast, help us understand what you're doing in the high level community and what are some things that you're doing in the world of digital marketing, and help us understand how we can find you, your companies, and things like that.
Sure. The way to find me is to go to closewithone.com to learn any more of these principles, to get one-on-one coaching and things like that that you might need. And I'm serving anyone that's providing a B2B high ticket service of continuing software solutions. So, as part of the community of Go High Level, if you're getting all these booked calls, but your close rate isn't where you want it to be, then that's the way I'm serving the community is we can have all these great tools and engines and automations, but when it's you on the call, it's all about you and your ability to engage and close that piece. So that's how I'm serving the community today is we all want more booked calls, but what we really want is more closed deals.
I love it. And how can people find you? Is there a website or a social channel that you prefer?
The best way is to go to closewith1.com, the number one. And that's the greatest way to find me and to set up a conversation and see where you want to go and what's that legacy you want to have happen. Because I might be able to help with that. And if not, I might be able to direct you to someone else that can help you with wherever it is you want to go.
I love it. So on this podcast, we talked about mastering the one call close. The three pillars we shared was understanding the landscape of the sales. The second are the principles of close with one. And the third thing is really the ending of the process, which is how to close the deals at the end of the call. Mark, we appreciate you jumping on a podcast session here. Any final words, final thoughts as we kind of close out the session?
Thank you, Paulson. It's been great being here. I would say the final thing is it's okay to realize that there's improvement that you need to make. And it's okay to ask for help and a coach that could be the outside observer and look at what you're doing. Because in sports, everyone that's in the game, they have a coach that helps them pitch better, shoot better, throw better, whatever it is. And that's actually the way to success is to have someone analyze where you are and help you move to that next level. So raising your hand and asking for help is the best thing that you can possibly do.
Love it. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. This is the High Level Podcast called the High Level Spotlight Sessions. We'll see you on the next episode. Looking forward to hearing from more of you and responses in the comments. And please say hello to Mark if you ever see him at one of our conferences or see him on in our online community. Our Facebook groups are really active as well. So thank you, Mark, for saying yes to us for a session.
You're welcome. It's been great being here today. You have amazing questions.
Awesome.